18th meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall or joining the Zoom webinar. The meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and Comcast Cable Channel 30 within city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during this meeting. If you would like to address council, you may come to City Hall or you may participate via Zoom. If you are interested in speaking, please let staff know by filling out a yellow comment card on the table near the entry and providing it to Mr. Stauffer, our recorder, or by emailing ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov for those on Zoom. When it is time to take public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards, email inbox, and Zoom participant list and chat. We will take comments in the order they are received and seen. Comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. We ask that all Zoom participants who intend to speak label their Zoom username to show their first and last names for the record. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. For more information, contact the city recorder at 503-786-7502. Servicios de traducción en español está disponible cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Para obtener más información, llama al secretario de la ciudad a 503-786-7502. Translation services are also available in other languages. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The City of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges, there we go, we're going to start putting it up on a slide. Thank you, Scott. The City of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya Etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. And on to our announcements. The city continues to seek nominations for the 2024 Volunteer of the Year. Nominees can include anyone who resides in Milwaukie or is a member of a nonprofit organization or business that serves the Milwaukie community. Nominations will be accepted until February 12th. Learn more and submit nominations on Engage Milwaukie at engage.milwaukieoregon.gov. City Manager Emma Sager is holding another open door session on Friday, January 24th from 9 to 10 a.m. here in the council chambers at City Hall. Stop by to ask questions, raise concerns, or just meet the city manager and hear about what the city is currently working on. Join the North Clackamas Watersheds Council and the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District to help install donated Christmas trees in the Willamette River this Saturday, January 25th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Volunteers will meet at Spring Park, which is located at Southeast 19th Avenue and Sparrow Street. Usher in the old year and welcome prosperity into the new at a Lunar New Year celebration on Sunday, January 26th from 1 to 3:30 p.m. The event takes place at the Milwaukie Community Center and includes interactive activities, crafts, music, and dance. Save the date for the start of the city's annual board and committee recruitment, which kicks off on February 1st. Participate in the city's work and get involved in your community by applying to serve on a board or committee. From the Arts Committee to the Tree Board, there are many interest areas, projects, and programs to get involved with through the volunteer boards and committees. Applications will be accepted from February 1st to April 1st. To learn more about each committee and to apply, use the online form at onboard.milwaukeeoregon.gov. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at milwaukeeoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555. Anyone have any additional events to highlight? Nope. Okay. We'll move on to our haiku then, and I want to thank Jennifer, who's in our audience and who has single-handedly saved the haiku and gotten a lot of submissions in, but I am still always taking submissions, so you can email them to me at the email address shown there. But we read Jennifer's at our earlier meeting in January, at the start of January, and so today we are reading one from Hamid Shabata Bennett. Hamid wears a lot of hats here in town. He's a local therapist, massage therapist. He's the photographer for the city. He's the photographer for NCPRD. And he's also a member of Roadside Attraction, a band that plays quite frequently here in town.
And the city's Arts Committee.
Oh, and yes, of course, he's on the Arts Committee. He was the chair for a while, and he's back on the committee now. So, here's Hamid's haiku. Milwaukie Bay Play, Willamette River Sunset. I stepped in goose poop. And yes, we like our haiku all sorts. They can be serious, they can be fun. We had one about bacon one time, so send in your haiku. All right, with that, I will move on to community comments. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community member comments regarding city business that is not already on the agenda. Before we begin, is there any follow-up from the January 7th community comments, Ms. Sager?
Thank you, Mayor. There's no follow-up from the January 7th meeting. I do want to note we received a piece of correspondence in between that meeting and this from Nick Hess regarding our downtown curb and water improvement project, which you have an item on your consent agenda tonight to approve a contract for that. Assistant City Manager Joseph Brelio connected with Mr. Hess and Jordan Ward, who owns the Collectors Mall building that's in front of that block face, to discuss the nature of the correspondence. Wasn't asked to delay that project to allow them to do some utility work. Upon the conversation, it sounds like we're going to be able to work out what they need and they don't need us to delay that work. So our recommendation is still that you approve the contract as it is on your consent agenda tonight. The only other piece of correspondence we received was from the business of Milwaukie regarding the Harrison and Main site discussion that we'll be having this evening. Just one more thing back on that downtown project, I just want to note for the record, because it can get a little confusing. The vote you'll take tonight is for a CIP project that really is just the sidewalk on that one block. It's been a long time coming, 3 years of discussion with the business community there to improve those sidewalks and put in pervious concrete there. There's a larger CIP project to do downtown streetscape improvements that will likely start next year. And so sometimes it gets confusing when there's two downtown improvement projects, but this is just the very narrowly focused one.
And it's kind of a pilot, right, to test out these new tree well.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
Great. For those in person who wish to speak, please submit a yellow comment card. I am not seeing any, so I am guessing people are here to speak about something that is on the agenda. If I am wrong about that, raise your hand, okay? Do you have any commenters in Zoom, Mr. Stauffer? No. Okay, then I will forego the rest of that script. No reason to read that if we don't need it. Tonight's consent agenda includes minutes of the City Council December 10, 2024 study session, December 17th, 2024 work session, and December 17th, 2024 regular session. A resolution authorizing a contract with R.A. Roth Construction for the Downtown Curbs and Storm Improvements Project, CIP number 2021-T58. A resolution authorizing an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County for fiber optic connection services, and an Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission application for Good Measure PDX 10999 Southeast Main Street, limited on-premises sales. Does any council member wish to remove a consent agenda item?
I'd like to remove the minutes from December 17th. There's a correction that I'd love for us to tweak. It discusses how you and I, Mayor Beatty, discussed the active enforcement of DUI citations, but I think it should be open container policy as opposed to DUI citations. So.
Okay, yeah, why don't we pull it off and we can revisit that. I should probably take a closer look at that too. So it's the work session or the regular session?
The regular session.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item A3. Which side are we moving?
I move to approve as amended.
Are you seconding?
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's consent agenda minus item A3. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Consent agenda is passed unanimously. All right. Council President election. Oh, I thought this was later in the meeting. Okay. So the Council President, we elected every 2 years, I guess, after the election of new councilors. The main role of the Council President is to step in and chair these meetings when I'm unavailable. I don't miss very many meetings, so the council president doesn't get a ton to do, but it does happen, and you never know how often it'll happen. There's some other things, I guess, other ways the council president gets asked to step in when the mayor's unavailable. Anyway, I wanted to just kind of, start with the current council president and have him talk about what I've missed about his job that I have overlooked. And then I guess I'd like all of you to, express your interest or lack of interest as it may be in terms of serving as council president. But we'll start with the current council president.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, the main role of the council president is the stand-in for the mayor when the mayor is unavailable. And so that job entails, running these meetings. And so the role is a bit different from what you're doing right now, in that you are facilitating a meeting. You're making sure that the meeting runs smoothly, efficiently, and everything like that. But I think the key thing that you have to keep in mind to facilitate a meeting is you have to step back a little bit from your own advocacy of an issue or something like that, to facilitate a broader discussion amongst the counselors so that all the views are heard. Believe it or not, the fact that you sit in that chair infers a power gap. And if the person sitting in that chair is saying, this is what I want to do, and we're going to do it this way, then that will have a chilling effect on the council and that kind of thing, and you don't get sort of that full, robust discussion. And obviously, you will advocate and vote for your position in that thing in the final end. But I would suggest that you hold that so that the council can have a full discussion and debate and deliberation. That's the main thing I think to think about. I would say that this last year when I was asked to serve, I was glad to serve. I'd be glad to serve again. However, I think it's advantageous, to bring new people into that role, give them a chance to be the mayor for a day, and that kind of thing. I think it's good for folks. I would like to see Adam Kursavati take that job. Adam has been in city government, for about, I don't know, 5, 6 years, something like that. I did his interview when he applied to be on the planning commission. And I remember getting his resume and I said, wow, I don't see many applications from football coaches at Portland State. And so, but he blew me away in his interview. He's been elected by the citizens here a couple of times, which says a lot for Adam. So he's someone I'd like to see in that role.
Okay, thank you. Before putting Adam on the spot, I think we'll continue on this side of the table. Are you interested in serving as I said I wanted to get everybody's,
Yeah. I'd be happy to talk to Councilor Kroser-Body and figure out, it's something that I'd definitely be interested in to see your ability to work as a facilitator, especially with our council lanes. It's a position that I think lends itself to making sure that every counselor feels like they have their voice being heard, kind of like you discussed, Councilor Massey. But I'd be happy to talk to Councilor Kroser-Body if that's something he's interested in too.
I really appreciate I'm actually flattered. Thank you for the kind words too. And I absolutely would be interested in serving that spot, but I actually was going to nominate someone else myself. Just wait.
well, let's let Councilor Stavanger be heard from first about whether she wants to.
But thank you so much for
Sure.
what you mentioned. No, I mean, that's
Well,
pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Go ahead.
No, please. I'll let back there.
I can feel all the eyes in the room. No, actually, I don't feel like I have the capacity this year. Our family is going through quite a big shift in partnership with the downtown community, and I'm gonna be split. So I don't have the capacity to take on an additional role with council this year.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, go right ahead.
Yeah, it's humbling, for sure. But the individual that I had in mind was, and you guys might be surprised by this, but our very own Councilor Anderson. And I know he's new to the council, but the reason for this is because since he's been on council and officially since last May, Councilor Anderson and I have had some very, very, very incredibly difficult conversations. And I appreciate that so much because that's part of this job, quote unquote, if you will, is to engage in difficult conversations, not just with your constituents, but with your fellow colleagues. And he could have very easily walked away. He could have very easily pulled back, but he leaned in. And I have met with him on several occasions outside of council to work on a number of things that he and I both see eye to eye on and he and I both care about. And even things that may not be a top priority for him, he's willing to take the time to listen. And I just admire and respect that very much about him, because I know in politics, that there can be, people can be served by egos, people can be served by titles and other things. So when you get to work with a body that cares so much about the public, as this body does, sometimes it's better to take a back seat and let the person who's done the engagement to really take that role. And he's, most of the time it's him that's reaching out to me to say, hey, do you have time to meet on this? I want to talk to you about that. And again, and a lot of it may not be things that he specifically brings up. A lot of it is things that I care about. And I just really appreciate being able to have your ear like that and you willing to lean in to a lot of these very complex, and you and I have had some difficult ones. So I do appreciate and respect that.
Okay, so we haven't technically framed either of these as motions. I guess, are you then declining to be nominated?
Yeah, I think my time will come. I gotta say though, I'm extremely humbled and probably blushing right now for the kind words and thought that you put into that. And I just appreciate you very much and what you've done.
Okay, then I guess you should read yours in the form of a motion.
Okay, I move to appoint Councilor Will Anderson to serve as council president.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Counselor Anderson to serve as council president. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. None heard. Welcome aboard.
Can I just say, thank you, Councilor Koster-Body. There's probably no one, ironically, that I've fought more with and that I've agreed more with on this body. I think about Councilor Massey's framing. I think there is no person who is a stronger advocate on this body or in this body for the things that they care about than you. And I really appreciate that you can continue to lead your voice or lend your voice towards those things. So I really thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. We will move on to our tree code amendments. So calling up our Climate and Natural Resources Manager, Katie Guevara, and our Urban Forester, Courtney Wilson.
Good evening, Council.
And just for people who might not have been tuned in last time, this is really a continuation. They don't have to start everything quite from the beginning. So, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. We are back again for tree code, hopefully adoption tonight. Just to give a brief overview about our proposed code changes. Our goal was to improve the overall organization and readability of the current code. Lots of grammatical corrections, expansion on a few definitions, as well as adding new ones. We also wanted to align the impact of the code with its original intention, reduce any loopholes in enforcement, and align with our natural resources code. We added a few articles for better organization, removed redundancies, provided space for potential growth of the code, as well as moved our tree board to Title II. We also improved clarity of code language, added and revised definitions. We renamed our Type 1 and Type 2 private tree permits to Type A and B to align with our natural resource code. We also clarified what trees can be used towards private development canopy credit. And we consolidated our enforcement codes, and violations are now clearly stated. We did receive some comments before last council meeting, so I just wanted to address those in this slide here. We did revise our damaged tree definition in order to have code compliance only enforce on trees that are posing a public or private safety hazard. In that former definition, I believe we had a sentence in there that talked about human-caused tree liens and such, so we made that definition a little more concise. We also added a definition for caliper, since that is a different measurement than DBH that is used for determining size of tree nursery stock. We also included the Milwaukie invasive tree list in our list of approval standards. We also added clarifying language about what trees would need bonds in development situations. Not all trees on a development site do need protection bonds. For example, if they're far enough away from the construction site and wouldn't be damaged by those activities as determined by a certified arborist. We also added references to our public works standards, since that does outline our tree root barrier requirements. We also added additional context for types of soil contaminants. These include parenthetical citations that include construction debris, concrete, garbage, or any other substance that renders soil inadequate to support healthy tree growth. And does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Well, that was the shortest hearing ever. It's not a hearing, but an ordinance adoption. Well, with that, if there are really no questions, I will entertain a motion.
I move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending Municipal Code Chapter 2.10 Boards, Commissions, and Committees generally, and Chapter 16.32 Tree Code for the purposes of improving readability and code enforcement.
I'd like to second the council president's motion.
It has been moved and seconded for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending Municipal Code Chapter 2.10 Boards, Commissions, and Committees generally, and Chapter 16.32 Tree Code for the purpose of improving readability and code enforcement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. None heard. It passes unanimously. Ms. Sager, would you please read the ordinance 2 times by title only?
Certainly. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending Municipal Code Chapter 2.10, Boards, Commissions, and Committees generally, and Chapter 16.32 Tree Code for the purpose of improving readability and code enforcement. And again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending Municipal Code Chapter 2.10, Boards, Commissions, and Committees generally, and Chapter 16.32 Tree Code for the purpose of improving readability and code enforcement.
And Mr. Stauffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Stavengerd,
Aye.
Councilor Kosarbati,
Aye.
Councilor Massey,
Aye.
Council President Anderson,
Aye.
Mayor Beatty.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0, ordinance 2247.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mayor, if I may,
Thank you so much.
for those in the audience and those looking on Zoom, who may say, wow, that went through really quick and there was no discussion or deliberation. This has been deliberated a lot in previous work sessions. We typically do a lot of homework before this comes to the public session. So rest assured, there was a lot of homework involved. Thank you.
And my appreciation to the staff for coming back so many times as we did that homework. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. And I will note that you didn't call out an important duty of the new council president, which is assigning the motion, which side of the table. Hello? Okay, welcoming up Assistant City Manager Joseph Brilio and Development Project Manager Mandy Bird to talk to us about the Harrison and Main site.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Council. As the Mayor said, Joseph Brilio, Assistant City Manager, and I'm here with Mandy Bird, our Development Project Manager. We're going to talk about the Harrison and Main parking lot and hopefully get some direction from you all tonight. As a little bit of background, I've had conversations with Metro over the last 3 years since I've been here about this lot. We have an IGA. Mandy's going to walk us through some of the background and where we are. Since COVID, this project, this idea has been on hold and it's not been a priority of the city. And it was only recently, probably within the last month or two, Metro approached staff again and was like, okay, let's figure out what is going to happen here. Please help us figure out what direction is and where we stand with each other on this. So that's what we're here tonight to discuss. And I'll let Mandy start and get going and then we'll have a discussion. Thanks. Mandy.
Good evening, everyone, Mayor, councilors. There we go. So to frame tonight's conversation, like Joseph was saying, I'm just going to refresh us on some of the background here. This is an overview of the site, and we've got some opportunities, some constraints, and the priorities that we would like to discuss with you tonight. As we discussed in the staff report, the city and Metro engaged in the IGA back in 2016 for the purpose of developing the site. And it's made up of 2 publicly owned properties.
Can I just say that was a revised IGA, right? Or I don't know, but I mean, there was a plan to develop this site in like 2008, and it was like some of your attachments had some of that info, but I mean, there had been a a plan, there had been an RFP. In fact, Mr. Asherbrenner sitting back there was on the committee back then. And then it kind of imploded in the recession, correct? And so then nothing happened until 2016, right? Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep. So the city-owned parcel is the eastern half, shown in red there, and then the Metro-owned parcel is the western half. And then the intention with redevelopment was to create a transit-oriented development that would serve as a gateway to downtown. And I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about the transit-oriented development. Some of the challenges with developing this site include losing valuable public parking availability, relocation of the farmers market and other events that occur in this area, and then mitigating any contamination that is present on the site. And then, like Joseph was saying, we wanted to just talk about if there's any update to the priority of this site. With Metro's transit-oriented development program, this is just a quick snapshot of what types of goals that they look at. We're looking at having it very close to mass transit, bike access, and other downtown amenities. And then, as part of the backstory as well, there was an exercise to generate goals for the development of the site. So I've just included these brief kind of 8 goals, but there's a more thorough description of the goals in the staff report. And this will be another thing that we can open up for conversation is, are these still the goals, or are we wanting to reassess any of those? And then that's pretty much the backstory, unless Joseph has more to add. And then we've got our discussion questions here.
Yeah, no, it's I think kind of early again in an old conversation. As the mayor already alluded to, this has been a conversation, something ongoing. It started, stopped, started again, stopped, COVID, and as well as the redevelopment of South Downtown, that plaza needed to happen. And so the question again is, things have changed. Council has changed. Has any of the goals changed, and has any of the ideas of council for that lot changed? And Metro's really looking for feedback right now. And it could be these things are different. They would like to move forward. They're definitely hoping to move forward with us, but they're wondering if there's other ideas. If parking is a significant issue, then that can be included as part of the goals, is how we continue to keep public parking availability there, whether it's through a parking garage or something along those lines. But that's up to you all and the policy. And this may be not the first or last discussion, I should say, about this. We can certainly have more. But it is on the staff tonight to hopefully get a little bit closer to what's changed or what's not changed. Now, also, that could also be possible. Maybe it's just keep going. I'll stop there. Let any discussions or questions.
Well, do we have people who want to testify? Okay, fill out your yellow cards and let's ask staff any clarifying, any questions you might have now, but we'll take the testimony from the folks that are in the room. Looks like Councilor Koshrabadi has a question.
Yeah, has Metro, outside of the goals and stuff, have they brought up any possibilities, any ideas outside of just saying, oh, maybe housing, or oh, maybe this? Is there anything any concrete ideas that they have for that location? I'm just curious to see how far along they are.
In the IGA, it talks about a mixed-use development with retail on the first floor and apartments up top.
Okay.
Yeah, in addition to that, I think right now, they're also open to things changing. Yeah, if there's other priorities that we want to include in this, that's the time is now to have those conversations. So their willingness, they want to see that lot developed. That's what they want to see, the whole thing. That's their goal. And they'd like to see some sort of housing there, but certainly if retail's or storefront, commercial space is important, if parking is important, we can bring those to them again and have that conversation.
Are they aware of how much of the community events go on there and how big our farmers market is?
I know it's
I probably
been,
don't think so.
and I know it's been a conversation of the past. I don't know that anyone appreciates how amazing our farmers market is as much as we do, so.
I completely agree. I will share, Metro, we had a conversation with Metro last year about their TOD program. There's examples of their TOD developments from around the Metro area that aren't necessarily retail on the ground floor, including, I think it's one in Rockwood that has open air first floor where a market is able to happen. And then there's building above. So, we're not here to speak for Metro. We're here to speak about our priorities for the site, but that was an interesting prototype that I saw when they told us about the Rockwood Market Hall.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Yeah. go ahead.
So I'm sorry, City Manager Sager, could you explain a little bit more? Like, this was a tour that Metro gave you, or this was, because the Rockwood Market Hall, that was a urban redevelopment project and had considerable public-private partnership as well, but I don't think it was a TOD.
I might be misspeaking. This was a very short conversation. It wasn't a tour. It was just a meeting we had with Metro staff where it's actually what prompted us putting this on the agenda to talk to you guys, because we weren't able to represent what the current council's priorities were for the site. But as Joseph said, as they're post-pandemic, looking at what they're going to do with their half of the lot, started a very preliminary conversation. And in that, I think Joseph and I both represented how important the farmers market is to this community. And that is when the Rockwood site came up. So I might be misspeaking as that being part of their TOD program.
Sorry,
I could dig a little bit more too, but the piece that stands out for me about that site in particular is how braided the priorities are. So, that was a vacant site for such a long time, and there was interest to redevelop it, but there was also great interest for that to be the center for community activities. The plaza that existed there previously was, painted by the community. This huge event called Rock the Block had been held there for a number of years. So I see some parallels, and I also see how vibrant projects like that sometimes help jurisdictions think creatively about solutions and kind of get out of their own way and in terms of what development potential looks like. So it sparked that for me too.
And is that a completed structure so people who wanted to could go out and have a look at that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. You could have lunch out there.
And just to clarify, I think as City Manager Sagor was saying, that was more, they were using that as an example as if priorities change, that there's other ideas out there to pursue. It's not 2016 anymore. So that was kind of their point.
Okay. Councilor Massey?
So refresh me again, the city site is on the east side, across from the historic city hall?
Yes.
City side is closest to historic City Hall.
I'm getting ahead probably, but can the two sites be developed independently?
They could.
Okay, that's a possibility. It's just something, a lot of noodles going on up
Yep.
here,
Noodle up.
Okay, that's it for now.
Council President Anderson?
My question, looking at the equitable housing goal, I know the governor sent out a housing report recently, or published a housing report that showed we have a real need for extremely low income units. And that 80% AMI, we've talked at length about how that's not quite extremely low income in Milwaukie. Do you have a sense of what the balance would be if we were to lower that percent AMI to 30% AMI? What would be realistic for developers? Right now it's 80-20. Would it be different, or is that possible to bring forward? Because I would be curious, I'll say stepping back, I think about Sparrow site as one of our real land banking opportunities as a city to be able to create that affordable housing stock. And I see this as another land banking opportunity, and this is the center of our city, a place really exciting that people want to live. And so developing deeply affordable housing here to me is a really exciting prospect, but I'd want to understand, I guess, what it would look like realistically to say We want deeply affordable housing units here.
Is that a question or a comment?
Hey, good point. If we were to, the question was if we were to lower that 80% to 30% AMI, right now it sets a minimum of 20% of the total build should be that 80% AMI. If we were to tweak that down to 30%, what realistically do you think we could require the total build percent to be?
I'm not sure. I think that's a bit, that needs a bit more conversations with the Metro partnership as well as with developers. I don't know if you have anything to add. Yeah. Hard to gauge right now on that. It would make it more difficult, obviously, and require other funding sources, but.
And what I do think we have learned, correct me if I'm wrong, acting community development director, but that when you build at the 30% level, you're also needing to look usually at co-locating support services.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions before we take public testimony?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Mayor. So one of the site control requirements is that the transit-oriented design development must be privately owned and operated. And I understand that, you know, this conversation is a key piece in being able to go out to bid for potential development partners in the private community. If the sites were separated, or if we as jurisdictions, you know, came up with an idea that could creatively meet the needs, how much of that would we see, like, how much of that could we see reflected in a request for proposals? Do you think that, I guess I'm wondering, operationally, the first part, if the sites were separated, is that enough space for a developer to say, yeah, I'd develop there? And then the second piece is if we were to come up with a creative solution to engage both sites in development and preserve the parking and the community use that's on those collective sites, is that something that a developer would say, ooh, that's creative. I think I could make that pencil out. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think so. I think for the first question, it makes it more difficult. I won't say impossible by any means. If you split the two lots and were to develop separately from a private developer, it just is, it's more constrained and more difficult, especially on the west side if you're on McLaughlin. But I don't know. I think having two governments involved is going to be a little bit scary for any private developer. And then adding other elements to it will be kind of interesting. But we also haven't gone out for RFP or RFQ for this before, so.
And then I guess a follow-up to that would be, in the conversations that you have had with Metro, have they expressed willingness to sell their lot back to the city?
Excellent question. We did. I'm laughing because that was one of my first thoughts was, what if one of us, has control of all these lots, or both these lots? They are not interested in selling. And they returned that question with another question, is if we would be interested in selling. I said, probably not. So we're here.
Okay, so stalemate.
Yeah.
And they're equally happy to then let this kind of standoff continue? Or at some point, will one of our jurisdictions have leverage?
What I think will happen is, I think they'll just they'll lose patience with us if we just drag our feet, and they'll end up probably just pursuing their own side by themselves. That's my guess.
I do think, Joseph, correct me if I'm wrong, that Metro would also be willing to come and talk to council about this. It just felt preliminary to do that when we hadn't checked in with you as your own staff on your priorities. So after tonight, I think Joseph's first call tomorrow is back to them to update them on what occurred, and then we can have probably a more potentially fruitful conversation.
Okay, I believe the council president had his goose up first.
Can I clarify? to Councilor Khosrowbadi's point, I think the farmer's market is a real concern here. What conversations have you had about where else that could be located? I know you mentioned in the staff report that it could be in South Plaza. We've gotten a letter, or maybe I'm confusing that with the Business of Milwaukie letter, where they say that's not an adequate site. I guess what are some?
Well, we have some people who want to testify who are from the farmer's market. So why don't we let them testify on that?
All right.
Well, you know, I look at this site and there's a lot of things I'd like to see. I'd like to see affordable housing. I'd like to see a continuation of the farmer's market. I'd like to see some parking because we're gonna need some parking eventually. I'd like to have a place for events like the Bing Drop. And, you know, that's a lot of wants, okay? And so I'm asking myself, who could figure this out? And I go, you know, there's a lot of smart architectural firms out in the world. Is a design competition possible? When you just put all those wants in a bag and they say, tell us what your best solution is?
I would say that's pretty much what a solicitation process is.
Well, I
in a
think,
way.
I don't know. I think of a design, of a solicitation process being a little bit more prescribed than a design competition. You know, where, I don't know, that, I see some difference because I see, you know, a solicitation being, again, more prescribed and whereas a design competition might be, you know, give us all these wonderful creative ideas. I don't know.
Well, I guess on that question, yeah, can you do I mean, usually when you do a RFP, if, you know, you go to the person at the least cost, or you go, you know, maybe you retain the right to choose by design, but do you retain the right to not choose at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And usually within the RFP, you create evaluation points for specific, you know, goals or objectives. And so if we were to move forward with Metro with new or old priorities and goals, then we would kind of put those in together into an evaluation system that would be embedded into the RFP. And so you'd hopefully get someone who knew what the two agencies really wanted and could deliver it and maybe show you at least some conceptuals of how they could. I hear your point. It's weird calling you Councilor Massey now, Councilor Massey, but I could see some engagement, some public engagement being a part of this, and also bringing those kind of concerns and maybe not concerns, but ideas and competition out to the public abroad.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go to the people in the room, I just wondered, do you have people online who are also wanting to testify?
There's no one in the Zoom.
Okay, no one is. Okay, great. So I have one comment card. I thought Brendan might be doing one. Okay, so we have two people who want to speak. I'm not going to be a stickler about 3 minutes since there's only two of you. But Mr. Aschenbrenner, please come on up here and hit the little button so that the red light comes on the microphone, and state your name and your neighborhood and your affiliation for the record.
Dave Aschenbrenner, live in Hector Campbell neighborhood. I wasn't necessarily, I am on the board of Celebrate Milwaukie, which provides the farmers market to the community. I was kind of waffling between personal comments and CMI comments, and I was kind of hoping someone else from CMI would take the CMI position. So it makes it a little more difficult for me when I address this. So it makes me sort of wonder where to start. I was involved in the planned development for this site with Metro. It fell apart at the last minute. The market is very popular. We all love the Milwaukie Farmers Market. I'm wearing the really old shirt tonight. So I think about this, I've been thinking about this since it came back up again, and I really have thoughts along, Can we put both of them together and do both or just one or the other? I like the idea of, we definitely need some parking in downtown. We have several new housing developments that have already come into Milwaukie and several more that are on coming soon. And we have a rather large project going in across from Providence Hospital. So when we were talking about this the first time, they were thinking this would be the one that started it all. Well, now we have several buildings, several places, several plans already in the works. So we're not the first one. We're not the one that's setting the trend here. So it really allows us to take a little bit longer, more thoughtful look of really what do we need and what do we want. I talked to several people in the community, some of them that do events. They really want to be able to still do their events in downtown. South downtown has problems for the farmers market. The biggest problem is there's no parking down there per se. We have a couple lots we use now behind Key Bank. We have a couple places farther downtown that we have. The city has a little small parking lot we use. So this makes it a little difficult to think about South downtown when you're going to be closing that street off every Sunday through the summer for almost all day. By the time we set up, do the market and tear down. The community parking is not there. There really isn't any. We are looking at, if we do this, we have to find a place for our vendors to park. And the only place close by, and really close by, is the high school. And they have events going on year-round in their lots. Not every Sunday, but several of them. They have events, games, whatever, that they use, or other people use the field, they need parking. So for our vendor parking, it's really tough. We got to have a place where vendors can be relatively close in case they need more product out of their vehicles, because you can't really unload everything. One of the disadvantages is we'll have to have one way in and one way out in order to do the setup and the tear down. And that creates traffic jams and, because this guy's got two booths, he takes longer to break down than the guy right behind him who wants to get broken down and get out of there. So you start to get into a little traffic setup and tear down. Changes that dynamic a little bit. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways to get in and out of that lot, of the present lot, which works out a lot better for all of our vendors. What would I like to see? So I've talked about problems a little bit. Let me throw some ideas. Parking. See if we can convince Metro to sell us the other half and keep it the way it is. Or build on it, build up. Put in a second floor parking in there, make the ground floor a high ceiling floor, 18 feet or so you can get the bigger trucks in there to be able to unload. You could still do all your events. It'd be a little bit more open air feeling. Have a second floor parking. And if you got really creative with your design things, you could get a pedestrian way over to where Milwaukie Bay Park there. And it doesn't have a landing problem that the one down on Washington has because of the intersection and the boat ramps. So another thought you could do is you could do a pedestrian crossing from the second floor. Or second floor and build above it, The views from the second floor on up are going to be some great views of the Milwaukie riverfront. Those are going to be, if anybody's looking, almost any building that goes in on that side of Main Street is going to have phenomenal riverfront views. So you could go up 2 stories, ground floor high, second floor parking, possible pedestrian bridge over, and then you can still build 2 stories on top of that. I'm looking at Joseph. You think you can get 2 stories on top of that of housing? So, yay, the developer may look at that and go, oh, I can't get quite the turnaround, but it's phenomenal location. Or even if they went office space, it'd be phenomenal location. So, shortly to recap, there's a lot of things you could do with it. There's a lot of ways it could be. Does it have to be just strictly transit-oriented development? I've got the book right here, though, what we were planning, what was going forward. I got the whole dog. In fact, I showed it with you before. You've seen it, you know, and it's all housing, and that's all it is. So I think we really need to think about this. We really need to look at what is the goals. There are parking needs downtown now. You can talk, most of the businesses, I think, will agree with that. And for us, as the farmers market, yes, we had a lot of input on South Downtown. Yes, I sat in on a lot of meetings, even with Mr. Alexander, was it? Sat through with all that, talked about all those concepts and ideas. One of them's come to fruition, another one, Coho Point, someday will hopefully come to fruition. But it's kind of a traffic bottleneck when you close off Main Street, and there's just no parking for our vendors or for our customers that we have now. You're going to be walking not just probably 3 blocks, almost 4 blocks if you park down at where we have, you know, behind Dark Horse and that sort of thing. So I'll leave it at that. I'm always willing to sit down, talk, meet. I'm retired now. I got a lot of spare time. My wife's happy when I'm out of the house once in a while. I'd be happy to walk through, talk with anybody, pull out the old drawings, old plans. I'm willing to talk. There's a lot of things I think that really could be, and I like Councilor Massey's ideas of let's think about if we can put some design competition in here. It could be a phenomenal building, and it would serve a lot of needs, i.e. that overpass to the riverfront. 2 floors of parking all week long with a new restaurant and a new bakery coming in right across the street from it, and the need that we have in downtown for parking. So a lot of potential. I'll take any questions.
Iceworth? Just, yeah, you're good.
All right, I didn't come here planning on talking, just saw David, or I think we got an email on Friday, this was on the agenda. Brendan Eisworth, Milwaukie, Historic Milwaukie Neighborhood Association, homeowner since 1998, rental house property that I own also since 2004. Been managing the Milwaukie Sunday Farmers Market, or as it used to be called, Milwaukie Sunday Farmers Market, now Milwaukie Farmers Market, since its inception in 1999. So that's over 25 years. We've been 26 years now that we've been running the market. Same beautiful location. Back was there with the Texaco there. Started out with 7 vendors. Now we're up to 85 spaces. We had over 100 prior to COVID, but we've actually we scaled back just to give people more space, customers, vendors, everybody. So yeah, so I've been doing this for over half my life. I've been running the farmers market. It's a side job of mine. I also work at the Portland Waldorf School. And the farmers market has provided small businesses, as you probably know, hundreds of small businesses, a chance to get off the ground. There's people call me daily now, wanting a spot at this year's market. I've talked to people, hundreds of people, and hundreds of vendors have come and gone from our market, usually growing their businesses from starting as small at our farmers market, and then have grown to sell their products at New Seasons Market, at Fred Meyer's, at, get brick and mortar stores, looking at like Pipsqueak Bagels, which if you've been there last year, incredible bagels. They went to New York during the season last year to go to a bagel convention, trying to promote their business. They've been actively looking and really trying very hard to get a business, brick and mortar business here in Milwaukie. And so, yeah, Milwaukie Farmers Market provides amazing space for community, all different kinds of people. People sometimes used to say, oh, farmers markets, hoity-toity people. You can bring your SNAP card down there. You can double your money for the first $20 you get thanks to Double Up Food Bucks, which is through Farmers Market Fund. We have over $100,000 goes out in SNAP, Double Up Food Bucks, and through a grant through American Heart Association. That's $100,000 going to local Milwaukie residents who come there to use their SNAP cards, which is huge. That $100,000 plus dollars, I think it was like $130,000 this past year, also goes to small farmers. So there's people who have tiny micro farms who live in Oregon City, live in Canby, Malala, those areas, and they're just trying to get by with a few acres, and that's a couple maybe with, maybe a couple helpers that can help them. They come in, they can't sell at big places. They can't compete with the Fred Meyers, and these probably can't even get into New Seasons. They can sell to local people of all incomes at the Milwaukie Farmers Market. And then I wasn't really thinking about too much, but I've been here since when we discussed this. Lisa, you probably may remember this with Mr. Bernard here back in 2000, I think maybe it was 2006. We were first talking about this when Metro decided, when Texaco left. They had plans, and people who were going to do the North Main project were going to build on that site, and then that fell through because of the 2008 with the housing crisis. And then, and so then you guys renewed it. I'm not sure how many years ago that you renewed the agreement with Metro, but it was a while ago. So I've been following this for quite some time. So I'd say the farmer's market kind of lucked out for that. And I just think that, but I was thinking about it, that we have a town square there. Once you give up a town square, and many places, I mean, I've had managers from every other farmer's market in the area come by, and everyone's blown away by our site. Nobody can compete with our site. I mean, maybe PSU has because of the trees, but they don't have the parking. And they have issues with people trying to get in, vendors trying to get in and out of there. So we have the perfect mix right there in Milwaukie. We lucked into it. It's amazing. But it's an incredible space. But once you give up a town square, I can't see any town that currently would have a town square, that has a town square that would say, let's build on that. If you have other options to build on, why would you get rid of your community gathering place? Your place that we know that people, all different people, you don't have to have money to come down to the cherry drop, or the cherry festival days that we used to have, or the parade that used to go down there. But anybody can come down to Milwaukie and enjoy that and build community. So to give that up, unless you had an equal space somewhere else, is mind-boggling. I don't know why you would do that, especially in this day and age when we really need to build community more than anything else, and we're losing touch with each other. And the South Downtown, while it was proposed years ago as an idea, post-COVID, well, it didn't get developed exactly the way the plans have. And I just dug those plans out. David asked me to bring those. I found them. They had 80-some spots designated, but that was not the way. Now, if you look at it, the way it actually was designed, it comes down to about 40-some spots that would actually be usable by the farmer's market. I don't know what happened. I was not ever brought in to discuss that. I know CMI was brought in to discuss that, but I never actually was there with anybody from the city with a tape measure to really walk that. So there's obviously the parking that David remarked on. I don't know about the parking lot that's adjacent to Axle Tree. If we'd be able to block that all day, that's a private lot. We'd have to figure that out with the owners of that business, or the businesses there. So there's multiple reasons why that would not work. And it really doesn't lend itself to a community gathering place. If it did, I think we'd probably be doing more things there. So we aren't currently. I think Olympia in Washington has an amazing example of a farmer's market. Has anybody been to the farmer's market in Olympia? Really nice. They've got either you guys been there? Okay. They've got a great structure there. It's right by the sound. But it's a great structure that opens up. So in the summertime, they have probably 100+ vendors. In the wintertime, they can close it down, make it more compact, covered most of the way. But if you could put something like that there, that would be great. Obviously, it would cost money, but it's a huge draw for that area. So I like the idea Councilor Massey said about, and I think David reiterated, about coming up with some plans. Have people in Milwaukie, bright people, talk about what we can do. How can we continue to build community, use this site? And I know Metro has their own ideas, but what does Milwaukie want to do? And I think that's really what we need to think about. I've been working for 26+ years now to build community in Milwaukie, and I hope we can continue to do that. And if worst case, that space disappears, we work really hard to come up with the best spot, not just the second best thing, but try to find the best spot to continue to support those small farmers, the small businesses, and the community that comes every week for 27 weeks a year to that space. So thank you very much for your time. I probably rambled on for way too long. So, any questions?
Thank you, Brendan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Back to the staff. Still nobody online? No, okay. I don't know if you guys wanted to respond to anything there, or if council just wants to start in with comments, observations. Nothing? Okay. Okay.
Can I clarify to the question I was asking earlier, Mayor? The discussions about parking and relocating the site, walk me through the options exactly that have been presented and kind of the pluses and minuses of where a new farmer's market could be.
Yeah.
And I guess coupled with that is, I would be curious, you talk about the Rockwood Marketplace. Is that the type of thing, like if there was a open air market on the first floor, is that something that our community could use for a farmer's market or not? I'm just a little bit confused still.
Yeah, Council President Anderson, congrats, by the way. What I can share was pre my time here at Milwaukie, but from what I understand, and I'm sure the mayor actually knows more than most of us up here, is that the South Downtown, part of that development of the plaza was to create a space for the potential and potential move for the farmer's market. Because obviously any kind of development would displace them from that site. So as I understand it, it was to do that first and then come back to developing the parking lot later. And so I don't know if there might have been other conversations, I'm not sure, I'm not privy to about where else they could be located, but from what I do understand, just from predecessors, is that was the intention of the South Downtown. Remind me again.
And that was the focus was, closing. I mean, nobody thought that little plaza was going to hold everybody. It was from Washington Street. That's why the bollards can go at Washington Street back to, I originally thought it was supposed to be back to the trestle, but apparently we have to keep the post office access. Although I don't know. I'm surprised to hear that they use that on Sunday, but so it's back to the post office driveway. And I will say, I mean, to share the question that was raised about the parking lot behind Axle Tree, the city gave like 2 or 3 feet of right-of-way to add to that parking lot. And it was my understanding at the time that part of that agreement and like giving away this right-of-way was the understanding that it would be closed on Sundays and it would not be accessible and it could be used by the market. But
Yeah. That sounds faintly familiar.
yeah.
Council President, to your second question about open air, that, again, that was part of the conversations last time with Metro, is that they'd be open to the idea of that with, and that's why they mentioned it. They mentioned the Rockwood design. That's not part of their TOD program, but it is a design concept that is working. It's open air. Does that answer your questions? Yeah.
Views, comments, questions? You ready to go?
Sure. Obviously, I don't want to lose the events that we've had. I mean, first of all, it took so much time and energy to do that. And you know, when you consider the Bing Cherry drop and a lot of the other events that we do at the sustainability fair, you know, you wouldn't just have to, it wouldn't just have to be the farmer's market you relocate, you'd have to relocate a whole ton of stuff. And, you know, if there's a way to do what Councilor Massey said, that is kind of weird, right? Not putting the president in there. I think you get the best of both worlds to the best of our ability right now. You get to keep and maintain a lot of the stuff that we have going on there. And while at the same time, you get to develop something that the community could need. And I love the idea that Mr. Aschenbrenner brought up about the overpass and the walking overpass there. I mean, that would be great because, you know, that's a busy road and it would walk people right down to Milwaukie Bay Park. You know, if that was something we could put together, and I know it doesn't, you know, obviously I'm a huge housing advocate, but I'm also a community advocate too. And the last thing I'd want to do is do anything that would be detriment to community building here. If you can have the best of both worlds or a little bit of the best of each one, I think that would probably be the best way forward. I would just hate to have to relocate, you know, so many years of what's been put together. And I'm sure the community wouldn't really be too happy about it either. So yeah, I would like to venture into that lane there that Councilor Massey presented.
Thanks, Mayor. So, I think that Well, first of all, one of the things that everybody loves about Milwaukee is the farmers market and how vibrant our community events are in general. I think the fact that we have so many people participating in things like the umbrella parade and the cherry drop and the tree lighting, the sustainability fair. These are homegrown events that are coming from our community it's not the city sponsoring an event and asking people to show up. These are things that people are feeling ownership and togetherness. That's something that is invaluable. So to displace that feeling would be a big misstep, in my opinion. This is the front porch. This is our front porch. And there's so many vibrant things that are happening around downtown right now that I think, the dissonance that we're feeling in this conversation is, whether to further disrupt, there's so many variables that are happening, like how long might construction happen? How long would traffic be disrupted? How far can we go with a creative envelope? But in answering those questions in a design exercise or charrette or whatever that looks like, I think that we have to be very, very clear about the constraints. So I would like to have, I would like it if our team went back to Metro and had a conversation between the two jurisdictions, not what are their wants, but what are the actual constraints on those two lots. And then we can go into a visioning exercise, and hopefully that can be collaborative, not just with Metro, but with our community as well. But we have to have an idea of what our bumpers are, where are the lines. And I feel like that actually saves people time and values the time that they put into coming to design charrettes, because you're not starting with just the whole pie in the sky. You're starting with, we have an ODOT highway on one side of this, right? And I mean, David, my vote is for a wildlife land bridge that goes over 99. I'm just saying. But to get ODOT at the table to have a conversation about what an overpass looks like, that's a big lift. And I would say that, that might live in a major constraint. It's a barrier that we have to work with that runs right through our town. On the other side, I would love to see Main Street closed on that block so that people can have more space to have a pedestrian pathway. But we have a transit center that's right there. We also have, new development, new neighbors that are coming into town, and that closes off how many parking spaces right across from the farmers market. So I think, if we put some time into actually developing a list of what we're actually working with, and then that will help direct the creativity that we can have with this process. I think it is helpful to look at the Rockwood Market Hall as a parallel inspiration. And I think that it might be helpful to talk to folks that like past development or redevelopment executive directors, one of which works for the Port of Portland. So she's still in the area. We can still call Emily and get like the history of that site, because it's been, a decade plus in the making. And they've gone from, are we going to put shipping containers in that space, to now this beautiful, like cross-cut timber, almost like Pike Street Market. And if we had a year-round, I'm sorry, if we had a year-round market, that would be amazing. Really amazing. So let's think about the actual constraints that we're working with, and then we can lean into the dream for what this space should be. But I don't think that we should shy away from what makes Milwaukie really special, and the activities that take place on that surface lot that are really important are the people.
And Counselor, thank you for that. Can I make sure I understand when you say go back and have that conversation with the constraints? I think when we're asking tonight about the priorities you have, would you say that a constraint you'd want us to represent, I know we haven't heard from all of council, but in your opinion, is that we need to preserve space for public events and markets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and to do that creatively. So what I need to hear from Metro is if they want to focus on transit-oriented design, there's a certain number of criteria that they have to hit for that design criteria. And how many of those can we meet with them if we're thinking creatively versus, are they just going to, stomp their feet and say, no, we actually just want to put high density housing in this space or nothing.
Massey.
This is a great conversation.
It is.
I mean, I don't want to look at this as a bunch of problems. I want to look at this as a bunch of opportunities. And so I'm kind of excited about this, but I got to tell you, Brendan hit it on the nail. I mean, he summed it up when he said, why would we give up something that brings community together? Why would we give that up? And boy, it's a darn good question. Yeah.
I'd agree with the sentiment here. My first time coming to Milwaukie was one of the farmers markets, and getting to go around and see the community here. It was one of the big reasons why I wanted to move here. I think a worry that I have in my head is that we let perfect be the enemy of good, and we don't come to the table being really clear on our priorities to Metro in a way that's pared down, that allows us to have a dialogue. I don't want them to develop their half of the lot into the highest density housing that they can possibly muster without taking into account what we'd like to see. I'd much rather come with a clear priority of having that community space and preserving the ability for our farmers market to be there. I think that might require us to compromise on some things. But I think what I would reflect to Metro is our line in the sand is we need community space and we need to preserve that. We're willing to be more flexible. If you really want to do transit-oriented development, we're happy to do something like that. But we do want to see a partnership that preserves this community space.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation and a very, very, very different conversation than 2016. I will say, in 2016, I was the outlier in that I saw the need for parking there. I was on the market board at the time, and I wasn't that concerned about the move of the market. I think markets can be quite successful in the street. The Astoria Farmers Market is a lovely farmers market. They just closed 5 blocks of Main Street. But I was concerned about parking, and I wish really that we hadn't had this conversation for another year, because I think with the arrival of Freem and the arrival of the new food cart pod, I don't necessarily agree that we have a parking problem downtown right now, but I think we will. I think come this summer, we will see that we have a parking problem downtown. So I was an advocate back in 2016 for 2 floors of parking, for whatever the mixed-use development was, retail, 2 floors of parking, 2 floors of housing. Because I saw the need for parking, and I think that is going to be more and more acute. I like where this conversation is going, and if we can find a creative way to keep an event space with parking and housing above, I'm all for trying to do that. I do think we need to all remember that's going to be on our dime. That parking, that's not going to come out of Metro. That's not going to come out of a developer. That's going to be on our dime, whether it's URA money, whether we have to, bond for it, et cetera. That's not something we can expect anybody else is going to pay for. But, I think it's a really interesting conversation. So, I don't know if you feel like you have enough,
I think I'll recap what I think I've heard. I think the consensus I've heard is the number one priority that we're going to go back to Metro with is preservation of event and market space. I sounded like there was a secondary interest of some of you in talking about preserving parking space. I don't know though if I heard that from a majority of folks. And I take the mayor's point that especially when the other half is the TOD entity, I don't think they're going to want to be paying for any parking preservation. But does anyone else have thoughts on the prioritization of parking in our return conversations?
For me, I think that's where the creativity of the design comes in. Because if on the TOD site, you have a greater concentration of housing, either starting on the second floor up, or, even if you forgo, the surface parking on that lot, then I think that on our side, you can get more creative with, with parking that's surface and a little bit covered or something along those lines. I think that, while I haven't had too much trouble finding a parking space downtown, but also we have a lot of people coming our way with housing and with the businesses coming in downtown. I feel like we're going to feel that hurt very soon. So if Metro is interested in sort of a hybrid and we blend priorities and funding, then I think that would be my preference. And I would be interested in an analysis of how those design, how that flexibility could preserve parking spaces for our future growth. I guess that's a yes. Should I just have said that?
Events first. Parking?
Council President?
It may have flipped in 4 years since you were on council, Mayor Beatty. I might be the only one who doesn't think we need more parking. What I would say is if we're spending public dollars, I think we have a housing crisis much more than we have a parking crisis. And if we're going to have a second ask, I would much rather lean in on our equitable housing goal and use URA funds to subsidize deeply affordable housing. If we want to be true to our climate targets, we need people to opt out of driving. And part of that means no longer bending over backwards to incentivize people to drive into downtown Milwaukee. We've got an amazing light rail station. We've got a lot of bus lines that go into downtown Milwaukee. We've got really bikeable streets that we continue to invest in. And I think allowing our downtown to gradually transition away from being so car-centric is a goal that we should push towards. And part of that is just allowing our downtown to naturally develop. So I would say I would have a much stronger preference for a first pass at community space than something to do with affordable housing and spending our URA dollars on that as opposed to parking.
I will say that comes from a bike rider who lives close to downtown. And there are a lot of people, I hear regularly from people on the other side of 224 who say we have unrealistic expectations about how many people are going to get on a bike and the extent to which people need their cars to come downtown. So I think, I'll just leave it at that. I think Councilor Khosrabadi had his. Go ahead. Oh, are you?
Yep.
You didn't put your goose up.
Sorry. I think in my priority it would be, community space, market, and parking. And that's just a realization that, as the mayor said, that I think we just have to be realistic about transportation and that kind of thing. And I'm not against any of these things, not against any of them, but that would just be, my priority. And so we got some movement in housing. Yeah, I wish we had some more, but we have some movement in housing. And so that's why that would be my top 3 priorities.
Okay. Councilor Koster-Body.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad Council President Anderson brought this up. And I guess I didn't really think about that because I just figured if they're going to build housing, then developer would probably naturally put parking. That would be, I know there's no you can't mandate minimums, but I would think that the developer would take a look at downtown and see the lack of, and probably build that. So that might fit asking for housing might fit the parking.
A developer might build the parking that the housing needs, but they're not going to build parking for the rest of downtown.
Right, yeah, and that's the other side of the coin. And the issue, from what you brought up, Mayor, is true too, because it's not just Milwaukeeans that come to the market. You got people that drive in from Oregon City, Happy Valley. I know some farmers probably come from Estacada, as far as out there, Malala, those areas. And so I think it would make things a little bit more difficult. Not only that, but we're also in the midst of pushing electric vehicles. And if anybody's going to drive, I would hope that they would at least drive an EV around. And if you have a family, it's kind of hard to get everybody on a bike if you got young ones. For example, me, I live on the other side of 224 on the east side. And with a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old, biking is not really an option as much as I would want it to be. But we do have an electric vehicle. And so we're still doing our part. Combating climate change, but it'd be nice to also have a place to park those EVs. So yeah, with as many people, if the market was only exclusive to Milwaukie, or some of these events were only exclusive to Milwaukie, I would say, I would agree. But because there's, it's starting to grow, and with Milwaukie Bay Park, hopefully with proper planning, we can get that built. I think that's going to just increase the demand for parking again, especially if you're a family, a person that has a family or have young children. It's not as easy to put them all on a bike. And then there's the winter factors too, right? I mean, it was 29 degrees all last week, and that's kind of difficult to expect people to not drive in conditions like that. So I would say it would be the preservation of community space. And then I guess it would be a combination of housing and parking, but probably parking first. Even though I'm a housing advocate, I just think for that space and what it's doing, the economy that it's bringing in and it's sustaining, I think that's an important piece that we can't forget.
Let me throw one other thing out there, which I'm surprised Mr. Aschenbrenner didn't bring up, because I remember him being an advocate for it. A restaurant with a river view. I mean, that's, again, another piece of the, competing priorities, housing and, but we only, and maybe a gas station will get redeveloped and we'll end up with a restaurant with a river view at some point. But it is something that was pretty widely called for in prior conversations about this site and frankly about Coho. It was something that people asked for with Coho Point. So I just want to put that out on everybody's radar screens. Do you think you have enough to have further conversation?
I think we do, and I'm looking at Mandy and Joseph. I think, here's what I've heard. Consensus #1 priority, preserve community event space and market space. I got, I think, 3.5 of you saying parking would be your next priority. Housing being kind of but I think community space, parking, housing. We will go back to Metro. Share that update, and then I think talk about what the next steps are. I do want to set expectations. I mean, again, you're looking at right now the full economic development team. We're about to hire another person, but so we also are going to be here. I think it's the next council meeting or probably the one after is the Sparrow surplus hearing. So we this isn't going to be an overnight thing. This is going to be the beginning of probably a multi-year conversation with Metro, with you at the community as we move this forward. So I just wanted to set expectations. This isn't a tomorrow construction's going to begin. I think our next steps are bring this back to Metro. And then what would be your thought, Joseph, on what goes next?
Yeah, I think there's definitely enough, at least to, here's what I took from the conversation too, is that, yeah, the partnership is still on the table. That's great. Actually, I think that's really good news. The second is times have changed. And so has some values. And so can we have the old new conversation about new values? And it's weird because I thought 2016 was 5 years ago. And I had to realize, oh my gosh, it's a lot longer ago than I remember. And so I think it's fair to say, and I think a couple of you have even mentioned it, when we were first having these conversations with Metro, there was really nothing here. There really wasn't. I mean, North Main happened, but Axletree wasn't here, and Hanley Place wasn't here.
That's right.
And so we have seen a lot. Freem isn't here. We're in this new city hall. So there's a lot that has changed. We'd hope to see housing units, I think, primarily, but now with Coho and other projects, I think it makes sense that some of the values have changed, and I'm actually appreciative of this conversation tonight.
Yeah, if you think about Coho, Henley, Axletree, and the Chase Bank, we're talking about 500 units of housing, right? Altogether, yeah.
And not at all thinking about Hillside, which is just up the hill.
Yeah.
Or the new Waverly.
Right. No, I was just thinking just in downtown. Obviously, there's other housing. There's New Waverly, there's a new Lava Drive, but I was just thinking of downtown.
But I think that that's a good summation, but I don't want us to lose the idea of creativity in this design, okay? Whether that's a design competition or something, but we just don't want to dust off of, the latest rectangular,
Yeah.
dense apartment.
Thank you,
complex.
Counselor. Yeah, we'll definitely take that note and feedback back. And I heard you loud and clear. I think it was Counselor Stavanger called it the front porch of our downtown. And so not losing that is an important element, and that's going to take creativity. So thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. I guess that's it on that one. And so then we did council reports except for our discussion of legislative priorities and lobbying. Does anyone feel we need a break before that, or shall we just plow on? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Winter market.
Yeah, all of this is contingent on there being a winter market. That's absolutely. Go ahead.
Can I go, Mayor?
A motion for what?
Winter market.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't operate it, so we can move all we want, but.
Sign a proclamation.
Okay, who's taking the lead here?
It has all three of our names. It's Joseph.
Okay.
Good evening again. Thank you for that conversation prior. And we're going to move into legislative priorities. This is going to be not something as thoughtful as I would have liked maybe in the future. I do want to do more thoughtful and more time spent on legislative conversations and policy conversations. We're here at a little bit of a time crunch because next week is the city day at Salem, at the Capitol. So we wanted to put something together to hand out to representatives that could kind of share the city's values and priorities when it comes to legislative initiatives. And as you can see in the packet, we listed basically the five that we gave to the League of Cities. Oregon cities. If we were essentially going to add those to a one sheet, and there's an example of Happy Valley's one sheet, something along similar, thanks, Scott, similarly to what they do. And if there's any other ideas or concepts you think that you'd like to include, please let me know and we can talk about them. I know Kellogg, the dam restoration project should be included in this because we've had continually ongoing conversations with legislators and will continue to do so for the next several years. So that would be one addition that I'd recommend from the staff level, and I think even the mayor has suggested it. But happy to, look at my colleagues too and see if there's anything else that I'm missing.
I think that's a great overview, Joseph. I mean, we've titled this Ledge Priorities and Lobbying Update. So just as a reminder, the city doesn't have a lobbyist. We did during the budget process earmark $10,000 in the council budget for potential lobbying needs. It's not a lot of money, but we have not discussed the allocation of that. We've had some questions from counselors about, whether we're going to need to earmark that money for Kellogg. Joseph meets regularly with the Kellogg Dam leadership team. In fact, this morning they talked about that. So maybe you want to give a little update, Joseph, just on what you're hearing from that team in terms of whether, what we should be planning for.
Sure. Thanks for the prompt. So just for the good of the council, this morning leadership meeting occurred to talk about Kellogg and a number of different grants that are coming up in February that we're rallying behind. In that conversation, I brought up the question of if the group leadership team thought that a lobbyist would be necessary. And the initial reaction was no, not at this time, not this very instant, but possibly in the future. And I know that Neil from Nick Wick is going to be putting together a little team to talk about lobbyist potential in the future and whether that's really needed in a much more strategic conversation. But essentially, there will need to be at some point probably some. Sorry, my voice is getting dry. There probably will need to be some kind of political action from either the council or a lobbyist going to DC at some point, at least speaking to our values and our needs behind the dam removal. But primarily our hope is to get as much funding through grant. Thank you, there it is. Thanks. Is through grant funding. And we do feel pretty strongly that we will get a significant chunk of construction grant money through the grant process. But yeah, it's too early just to say, we for sure need a lobbyist to start right now. But again, we're going to have more conversations about that in the near future.
So I'll just say that, Milwaukie had its own version of this sort of like Happy Valley document, but we've had one in the past, but neither Scott nor I could find it, unfortunately. I think that, so Councilor Kosrabati and I are the only two signed up to go for City Day. Anybody else are you going to be there? Okay. We've gotten, we're having trouble with Kathleen Taylor. If you can get us a meeting with her, please do. Actually, Mark's office responded right away and said they would be happy to meet, and they'd even come to the Senate side if we all wanted to meet together. And they gave me a time block, which I can forward to you.
Did we reach out to Representative Dobson or Senator Meek as well?
I did not, but we probably should.
Okay.
We probably should do both of those.
Okay. I can send in a request to each of them if that's okay.
I'll send you a copy of what I sent to Gamba and Taylor. What we put on this sheet is really for next week. And, we will track more bills than that. We will, things will be, the governor's housing bill and, all these other things. There will be things we want to track. I guess I feel like the energy affordability stuff that I forwarded to everyone a couple days ago should go on here. It fits with our, and I will say, this may change, we may want to change it in February based on council goals. But I feel like that fits with both housing and affordability goals. So I feel like that should go on here. There was something, there were a couple things on the LOC one that are not on this list. The LOC made priorities, and one of them is the recreational immunity. I mean, I don't know if Justin or anybody wants to speak to that, but it seems to me that is something we want to support. All the cities want to support it. You know. Do you?
Yes. I think that has quite a big steamroll behind it to get that approved. I think it's probably going to go through, but if we're looking at adding it to a list, I think it's something that we should definitely be interested in supporting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, otherwise, I guess the one that LOC called out, which, you know, sort of fits with these, but it is not explicitly one of these, is behavioral health enhancements. I think we all know those are needed and sound like they're going to be a priority this term. Do you think they're going to be a priority this term?
I think so.
Yeah,
Less money than before.
yeah, okay. Go ahead. Council.
I can wait till you're done though.
That's it from the LOC list, yeah, go ahead.
My one piece of advice, I would compare asking the legislature for stuff like wishing from a genie. They're going to find, like, you have to be really specific and say your wish exactly how you want it. And ideally, you only get 3 wishes. Because if we come with a really long list of things that are vague, like infrastructure, like any of these LOC priorities that we put forward, without narrowly tailoring them and making them very specific to Milwaukie, it's going to be it's going to be really easy to say that they've done something for us without them actually having done something for us. And so I think if we have a narrowly tailored ask to Kellogg, to if it's recreational immunity, if it's...
So you're saying even non-monetary, because I know there's always the Christmas tree rush toward the end of the session. I was thinking this was not where we ask about monetary things. Are you suggesting that this is where we ask about monetary things?
I think this is a good spot. I think, so if I were to put myself in the shoes of Rep. Gamba, and you get a letter that looks a lot like the Happy Valley letter, there's a whole lot of really vague statements that, like, you know implicitly what address measure 110 shortcomings are, and you know implicitly some of these other things, but frankly, your city giving you that letter isn't going to change it that much. What will get us the most bang for our buck is if we have 1, 2, or 3 really specific asks, policy and budget, that makes it clear that, like, let's take recreational immunity and run with it. If this is our one thing that we write to our representative about, it's very clear, yes or no, whether they gave it to us, versus infrastructure funding to pull from the Happy Valley one is much more vague. Do they preserve the 50-30-20 split? Is that infrastructure funding? Do they vote for a transportation package that they're getting whipped to vote for regardless? Is that infrastructure funding? Versus if we say we want $1 million for Monroe Street Greenway, or we say we want some legislative fix for stop signs, I think that gets us a little bit more. And it's more memorable, I will say too.
Well, that's really interesting because that's not how, the mayor's consortium that's not how any entity I've followed has gone about it. I mean, if we're going to do financial asks, I mean, it's actually the dam is not really ripe for a financial ask. Milwaukie Bay Park might be ripe for a financial ask. But I guess I just didn't think this was the time for a financial ask. I kind of felt like that always came later in the session, but you're saying,
I would say
it now.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that is very true in the state legislature. And if you're Rep. Dobson, who is not from Milwaukie, but knows that you represent a portion, and all you ever hear your Milwaukie representatives talk about is Milwaukie Bay Park, Milwaukie Bay Park, Milwaukie Bay Park. There's only one thing you can do to satisfy that little sliver of your city. You kind of force them into doing the one thing that you want, as opposed to a laundry list that maybe she gets from Happy Valley as well. And so I think if we start session with one clear ask, like Milwaukie Bay Park, and make that the only ask, our whole one pager is about Milwaukie Bay Park, and that is what we hit on multiple times, I think that will make it so. The goal is they think Milwaukie, and the only thing they think is Milwaukie Bay Park. And that's the only way that they can make us.
Did you say that should be the only thing on the list?
If that's what we really want, and it's a financial ask, I think that's impactful. If there are policy asks, I think we could narrowly tailor, but I'll be frank, the best policy asks come from building a relationship with the legislator, so then you can have them, I think about Rep. Gamba's interactions with us about, not that I was there, but 3114, where it was a dialogue with the city. That to me is the best way that we talk about policy. Something that's more vague, they might already come with preconceptions about how they vote. So ideally you're doing one of two things, building a relationship with the legislature to talk about policy in an evolving way, and making a very clear singular ask where they say, ideally, Rep. Gamba says, well, crap, I got to get them their Milwaukie Bay Park money. This is all I can do. And if we are really marshaled in our messaging, I think that forces their hand to do that. I don't know if that's helpful.
No, it's super helpful to hear, given your experience, Councilor Stavanger.
Thanks, Mayor. When I speak with folks, I try to focus on three different things. I have an ask, something that will stick in their mind, and something that is very specific. I also try to have like red light, green light on some bills that they're either in committee around or that they've sponsored or things like that. But I'll phrase it more in terms of questions, or saying like, I'm hearing constituents in Milwaukie talk a lot about this. I know you're on that committee. Where are you at with this part of the bill? And then that shows that I'm following that bill, I'm tracking its status, I value their involvement, and so do the residents that we represent. So, and this is all assuming that you get, 15, 20 minutes, and you're not in a crowd of 15 or 20 people, right? So if you have a one-on-one, I found this to be successful. And then I also really like to ask, how can I help? So, there might be a bill that they're sponsoring that aligns, it's on our green light. And what we can do best is write a letter of support, or we could testify in a committee. They need that help too. And so I try to kind of sandwich those three things together. The ask is something that will stick with them. And you're right. I'm going to call you CPA. That you're right, that, if they're hearing that consistently from folks from Milwaukie, whether it be community members or city councilors or, the voice in the community, I think that, it's hard to slice through all the noise in Salem during session, especially a long session. So anyway, those would be my suggestions. If we craft a specific ask, have our list of bills that we're following and how they pertain to the committees that folks are represented on, that we're talking with, and then how can we help?
So the how can we help, Rep. Gamba is pretty good about letting us know, but we should let the other ones also know that, please let us know if there's a, but he usually does that a few times during the term, like this one could use some testimony, please. So would you, we have an ask, or we have two asks, is what we say in orally, but would you put a more complete list on a piece of paper, or no? Is that distracting them?
I love to leave something behind because, especially if you're in a group with a lot of different people, they're hearing all these different priorities, and it can be overwhelming because they're going to the next 15-minute meeting, right? Or they're going into a committee. So I love to leave something for them, and I'll leave a copy for their staff person. And then I'll follow up with the staff person. and say, hey, I know it was really hectic during our meeting. Want to make sure that you had a chance to check out what we left behind. Did you have any questions? What are your thoughts? And I agree with you, CPA, that it requires that constant relationship, I don't know, tending. Yeah. So I would have like a one pager.
This is really good.
Would you limit your one pager to your one ask, or you would have like, these are things we support? You would have your green light list or whatever your.
So I think that depends on who you're meeting with and at what stage in the session, honestly. If we're meeting with folks like as part of legislative day, and you come up and you say, like, hey, really, really thankful for this time. I want to leave behind this information. This is an issue that's really important to Milwaukie right now. I'd love to follow up with your team later in session so we can get some time to talk about it. And that way, then they have that one pager on like Milwaukie Bay Park. Later in the session, you might make connection then with the office and say, hey, I'm really following this housing bill, and I notice you're on such and such committee. I'd love to get some time to talk with you about this piece and this piece, because this issue is really important to Milwaukie residents. Also, how are you feeling about that Milwaukie Bay Park issue that I dropped off last time? So it's just kind of like you build on it. If you're just going to get one meeting with that person for the entire session, then I would prioritize your ask, because they're probably already tied in with the red light, green light on a lot of their bills.
To Councillor Stephenjord's point, I love the idea of I think about it like a call me maybe list, where if the legislator is thinking about this bill, they should reach out and contact Milwaukie to talk more about it. Like the governor's housing bill is a great example. If you're Rep. Dobson, who's maybe not as familiar with Milwaukie, we don't have to indicate yes or no whether we like it at this point. We should just say, if you're thinking about this at any point, give us a call so we can talk to you about this. And I think we could do a call me maybe list really easily with our indicated yes or no recreational immunity. Give us a call to talk about SDC deferral, whatever that is, right? Enumerating that. But then having, maybe that's on one side, a few 6 or 7 bills that we like, not that much about them, but just, hey, flagging this for you. On the other side, in big bold letters, Milwaukie Bay Park. And I love the idea, like you were saying, Councillor Stephenjord, City Day is a great first step. That's where we plant the seed. Hey, all we care about is Milwaukie Bay Park. Talk to us about the rest of this stuff. I want money for Milwaukie Bay. Coming back and like in 2 months saying, have you done anything on Milwaukie Bay? Again and again and again, they should just hear Milwaukie Bay Park constantly from, luckily we have 5 different characters we can parade in front of them. And I think that that's really helpful.
Fascinating. Okay. Do you have a sample paper that you've liked, that you've seen somebody do that you like?
I'll bring some one-pagers. I could also draw up, I was gonna sketch this as we were talking, a little like dream one-pager, but I'll pull some up.
Well, okay, I mean, yeah.
I think it's a big speech bubble coming out of Rebecca Black's mouth that says, call me maybe, and then. No, I think this is helpful, but I think, were we saying for this city day, you just want it focused on a priority ask or 1 or 2 asks, and the call me maybe list is later? Or are you envisioning kind of a double-sided one-pager? One half is, these are the things we're watching, call us as these come up. The other side is, this is what we really want. This is our one big ask. I'm most, and I will admit, of the people up on this dais, I know the least about legislative affairs. So these are honest, ignorant questions. Do we foresee a second round at this? I don't know how much capacity you all have to stay incredibly engaged in legislative affairs. We do have this individual, but it maybe is the one. Is this a really important opportunity to seize on with both?
Well, I heard him say double-sided, right?
Yeah, and I will say, if Milwaukie Bay Park is our one ask, they better hear about it every time we meet with them. And we should make it really clear that this is our take-home priority, or like, this is what really matters. But I think a second side with a little call me maybe list is perfectly fine. Or you could have 2 one-pagers even.
Just from a logistics side, from a staff, on the call me maybe list, are we going to be able to do that in time I'm just thinking about putting this together and being able to.
Well, I don't think it needs to be, each one is just like a bullet, right? It's not like a long paragraph.
Maybe I'm overthinking then.
And it's things that are already going on there, right? I mean, we're not necessarily putting in bill numbers.
I thought we were.
So,
Well,
I think some things don't even have bill numbers.
Right.
Yet, some things haven't even been introduced. Like, I mean, I'm really interested in this session in following a conversation about youth passes for transit. And that is just a legislative concept at this point. So it doesn't have a bill number, but as soon as it does, I would love to be able to connect with folks and talk with them about how important it is for our economy and our climate and the well-being of youth in our communities to have access to TriMet, So anyway, I guess I would say for right now, let's make it really simple and have some key areas like we really care about housing. We really care about behavioral health. We really care about, funding for systemic infrastructure.
Those 5 priorities that were, or maybe adding a recreational immunity, but, those with a little more detail about them in Milwaukee, but that's the call me maybe list.
Yeah, and I don't think we have to get specific into bill numbers at this point.
We've got, to keep in the back of your mind, February 25th is the measure intro deadline. And so that's when we'll have a full picture of all the bills, except for there are placeholder bills that will be amended later. But I think that's less relevant now. Maybe what we could do is we start our first meeting saying, Milwaukie Bay Park, we've got it tattooed across our forehead. Also, if you hear something about transportation or housing or fill in the blank, give us a call. We could, in this meeting, ask for a follow-up sometime early March and say, we're going to have for you a list of call me maybes where we have specific bills that we want to talk to you more about. We come in that meeting and say, by the way, Milwaukie Bay Park, also here's a list of some bills that we'd like to talk with you about more. We follow up again, talk about Milwaukie Bay Park, maybe one more time and talk about Milwaukie Bay Park. But I think I like that. We don't need to know all of our bill numbers because frankly, we don't know them now. But making sure that we talk about Milwaukie Bay Park as early and as often as possible. If that's our one thing that we want, I think that's our biggest priority.
Counselor?
Gosh, I'm all for Milwaukie Bay Park, but my basic question is, how much and what is it going to be spent for? Isn't that going to be a pretty simple questions they're going to ask?
Well, I think we have to ask for a specific amount. Yeah,
I think you got to have an idea what you're going to spend it on. Why do you need it now? I don't know.
we have
Those are questions I would ask.
lapsing grants and escalating costs,
I
and
think-
we need $5 million.
I think we could, we can look at the project, what we can do is look at the project budget last time it was ever updated. We can look at inflation and we can look at the lapsing grants and we can come up with a ballpark figure of what we think the gap is. It's interesting timing to say the least,
Yeah.
but it's also, it's very also interesting to see, I think, the support among this council for that being an ask.
I don't think you need a project plan, but I'm just hesitant to say, give me $1 million.
Well, Mark did put in for $3 million for the park last time that we did not get. So, I mean, that's the other thing. You don't always get it. But he did put in for $3 million last time.
I would look at the amount that we had outlined for the build of the park and then, best possible paths forward, between us and the county. What's the gap now because of inflation and, issues within the construction field and scarcity of resources and things like that? I mean, I think that's perfect rationale. And I mean, I want to assume that we're going to be able to work collaboratively with the county to be able to do this, but when we get to that point, neither one of us has enough capacity and resource to get us to the finish line for that build because things have changed. So let's close the gap.
I would say 5 million is an easy number to remember, and easy to remember is helpful. We could also look at the county's portion with our SDC funds and maybe pretend like we're backfilling that, or like the narrative could be, we want to make it as easy as possible for the county to come to the table and helping them pay for their portion of the project.
I was just going to say the county's portion.
Yep. So I think having a good number is a smart thing to do.
We are looking into numbers for a variety of reasons right now, so we'll do that, and we can plug something into the draft one pager that we will circulate. We'll circulate it, then need comments sent back to Scott so that we avoid a serial meeting. But we, I think, have the direction we need from this to make a two-sided one pager for those attending City Day. I did want Scott to, so that's kind of getting us ramped up for this milestone. Then there's ongoing tracking of the legislative process and opportunities to engage throughout that. So Scott is our point person on that.
Yeah, just thank you, City Manager Sager. I just wanted to check in years past, I've kept a spreadsheet. And so acknowledging that there are a few bill numbers out there quite yet, but as you get them, if you want to send those to me and I can put them on the tracker, and then as we have our meetings, then we'll have it on the agendas throughout the session until June. I can do quick updates and I'll prompt discussion about those bills. On a similar track, although a little less specific, there have been council typically in the past has wanted to do support letters for different bills in different moments. And we've acknowledged here, and we all know the legislature takes forever, but then all of a sudden there's something that needs to be done before the next council meeting. So if you are going through the session and you want to propose a bill for your colleagues for council to approve, the best thing you can do is work up that Word document and then get it to me, and then we can get it through the packet to set up the conversations to have here on the dais. And there is a precedent for once a letter has been drafted, and if it touches on maybe a specific bill, but also talks about a broader policy area, and then council signs off on that, that's a letter that could potentially be retooled for use in a different circumstance when the bill evolved. Or, you build a precedent for council, what council supports as more of these letters are drafted and adopted here on the dais. So just keep that in mind. There is specific times you need to support a bill, or you want council to support a bill, and there are also opportunities to adopt statements and letters that then you can use to support a policy area generally. So yeah, just if you can get those Word document versions, even if it's fairly rough, then that just helps.
I was going to say, don't worry about making it look nice. Just draft the body. Scott's excellent at putting together, making it look nice and finding the right addressees for the committee or whatever it may be. So just worry about writing the body of the letter if you're crunched for time. And yeah.
Yep. And then on that note, my last thought was, you are all individually elected members of elected officials, and you can certainly write letters on your own behalf using your own name. And if you ever want to get something on letterhead with just your signature formatted and emailed down to Salem, that's something that Nicole and I can usually get turned around, pretty quickly, probably within a couple hours most of the time, but try to give me a day or two, depending on what's going on. But individually, you all have a voice and you can submit testimony on your own behalf. If you want the broader council to consider something, it really should come to this space, and then you can get the approval from your colleagues on council, and then we can use all your signatures. So just bear that in mind too.
Scott, can I give you a bill number right now?
Please.
HB 2537.
It's on the list.
Thank you.
And I would say that email I sent over the weekend with, which originated with Brad Reed at Building Resilience, has a few bill numbers in there on some of the energy affordability bills.
Would you like all of those put on to the list?
I think so, yeah. Not everything on there had a bill number yet, but there were probably like 4 bill numbers in there. Yeah. Other thoughts? Oh, sorry. Council President.
That's vestigial. I forgot what I've even been saying. Thank you.
Okay.
I do
Okay.
have other, but not on the legislative priorities.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, before we go on to anything else, other thoughts on the legislative priorities? We will get a draft and we will send comments back to Scott. Is that my understanding? Okay. All right, if nothing else,
Could I add one other thing? To our call me maybe list, I feel like Rep. Gamble would be remiss if we didn't say something about utilities. It's a good affordability thing, but it's also a big thing that he's working on. And I know that he would appreciate Senator Meek or Senator Taylor or
seeing that.
Rep. Dobson.
So you're
Yeah.
talking about the transmission stuff, not just the affordability stuff?
I think it's fine just to say utilities and leave it at that. We
Oh,
can
okay,
Bring up transmission. There are a few other bills that are good to track, but
okay.
we're happy to put in a good word for him.
Would it be helpful for staff if we set a deadline for the priority, the one sheet that we're going to build for the LOC day? When do we need that by?
If we circulate a draft by Friday morning, and then if the I think if you get us comments by Sunday night,
yeah.
we can use Monday to clean it up, finalize, and print copies for you.
Do we ask as council comments by Friday?
No, draft by, we will get a
we're-
draft out on Friday, council comments by Sunday.
We start by Sunday. Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, Counselor Kosher-Buddy?
Yeah, sorry, not to hold anybody up, but there is a couple of things I wanted to bring up for this council. And Emma, help me out with this because I might have forgot who exactly I was going to send this to. But there's 2 letters that I'm going to be working on putting together. Speaking of those letters, one of them, I don't remember if we said we're going to, that was going to be for PGE or the PUC. Do you remember, Emma? Was that for PGE?
PGE
Okay.
is what you had mentioned to me.
I wanted to write a letter to really ask PGE what their plan is. Over the last 6 years, they've increased their rates by 50%. And year over year, they keep doing the same thing, while again, making over 200 million net profit a year. So I'm just curious to know, like, at what point is it going to stop? What is the solution? They just can't keep raising rates. The way that we're transitioning to electrification is pretty quick. They're gaining new customers by the thousands. So I'm just curious, what's their plan? Is their bottom line more important than, taking care of the ratepayers and the infrastructure? Because they keep saying it's for infrastructure, but they don't spend their own money on it. And I would think that they would do a better job of budgeting for infrastructure costs. And then the whole point is that, the PUC just can't seem to say no. So we've been great partners and stewards with PGE. The funny thing is, when we raised our right-of-way fees, PGE was the only one who sent a letter to Milwaukeeans basically blaming us for the increase. I didn't see that from Northwest Natural.
Really?
I have gas too, and I didn't get a letter. I got a letter from PGE. So I'm just curious, not really curious, but for the sake of our constituents and the residents here, it's like, long story short, what the hell?
I mean, the PUC did reduce their ask this last year.
Right,
I'm
but
pretty sure.
But the point, but they don't go in asking for, like, they go in, that's business 101. They go in asking for that percentage of like 30 because they know they're going to get 21, right? Like, that's the whole point. And anybody who's done negotiations knows that you always walk in asking for more than what you want. So I'm just concerned with the year over year constant increases. I mean, at some point the levee's going to break, the dam's going to break, there's going to be a leak. I'm just curious, like, is it just going to be a yearly thing and for them not to try to work with us or, try to be better partners in this thing while they, again, are gaining customers by the thousands. I think we're owed a little bit of an explanation, and I think we're owed some answers. So I'm going to be putting together a letter. This council is more than welcome to sign onto it. The other, I'm also.
Could I?
Please.
Yeah, so, there's been a lot of activity on this subject, and I just, I was surprised. I want to say it was in the past couple of weeks, I read that Senator Wyden had basically bugged the PG&E about this. And so I just want to make sure we have the most up to date. And if we can, tag on to Senator Wyden's point, all the better. Then that amplifies our own voice.
Right. That's a good point, because then maybe I can look at, see what's already been written.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would say that some of the things I sent around this weekend are about taking away what PGE can get, what any electric company can get rate increases for, like
Right.
the cost of connecting, data centers. That's a big one. Like right now, apparently state law prohibits them from charging the data center for that. It has to be borne by the general ratepayer base. And so that statute would change that, and also taking out their lobbying and their, sort of promotional expenses from things they can charge the ratepayers. So there are some pieces in there that will help, but doesn't hurt to write to PGE.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you. The second letter, and again, I don't mind standing alone on this one, if you all don't feel like this is our space, and this is what drove me to House Bill 2537. So if you're not aware, our American Legion post is, I think, the biggest in terms of membership in the state. We have about, I think, 1,500 to 2,000 members just right there, which says a lot about how many vets are in the region. I think Clackamas County has one of the highest concentration of veterans in the state. Right now, the VA, specifically the Portland VA, is denying veterans their community care rights, their Mission Act rights, and they are in direct violation of a federal law. This is not something I'm making up. This is something I deal with every day, and this is something that I was told blatantly by multiple social workers at the Portland VA. The problem is that right now, the Mission Act, the federal law, requires that if the VA is unable to provide a veteran with a mental health appointment in 20 days or less, by law, the VA has to refer that veteran out to the community, which is quote unquote community care. That's what it's called. They're not doing that. It's 30 days for regular healthcare needs. It's 20 days for mental health. Right now, on average, the average veteran that I have spoken to, or the average veteran probably in the state that has to wait for a mental health appointment, is giving a 2-month wait time, because they're not sending them out to the community. They're denying them that right. They're breaking that law. What the VA is doing currently is that their directive is to exhaust all internal options for care before they send the veteran out. And the purpose for that is to save their money. Now, you would think, why would the VA need to save money considering their budget is half of our defense budget? The VA's budget is nearly $400 billion. They would be the second most powerful military in the world if they were their own country, spending that much on their defense. So what they're doing is they're deliberately denying veterans the care they need, which has already cost a female veteran her life, which I recently, in my day job working in mental health, had to fight for another female veteran who was raped twice in the service to get her care, and they denied her. I called a social worker, and I told the social worker verbatim, you guys are in direct violation of a federal law. And that social worker said, we know, we just can't do anything about it. What she told me, and this is Roseburg VA, this isn't even Portland. What she told me was that last March, the Roseburg VA had a change in leadership. Prior to that change, they were told that they were doing everything right, referring veterans out. Roseburg was doing such a good job that some social workers would send veterans down to Roseburg to get the care they need because they knew Roseburg would refer out because Portland won't. Well, that changed last March. A new regime came in and said that they're doing everything wrong, they're spending too much money. So now they're forcing veterans to wait on mental health care needs. Their idea of care for this female veteran was, we have availability in White City. The White City VA is a residential program. However, they don't have any openings till late February, which, doing simple math, is past the 20-day requirement for the federal law. They don't care. And their plan for this veteran was to have them come all the way down from Portland, go down to White City. From White City, they would send them to Astoria to detox off of nothing because they've been detoxing at the facility they're at now, and then bring them back down to White City. These veterans have rights to go and choose the care they want, and the VA is blatantly disregarding it. I've already sent an email to the director of the VISN, which is the VA broke the country up into fragments of care. I sent a letter, I've already sent the email to Senator Wyden's office. I already got in touch with his Veterans Affairs liaison, and we're already working on the situation. But the bottom line is veterans are being denied care when they qualify. And it's resulting in severe issues, and it's resulting in an extremely high number of veteran cases of suicide. And considering that we have one of the biggest posts in the state, if not the biggest, I think it's a duty of ours to protect our constituents, our veteran constituents and their families. So I'm going to be putting a letter together to the VA, and surprisingly, they don't have a director right now, basically calling for action and clarification and explanation. Like I said, I've already demanded that in an email I sent today, but I think this is bigger than that, and I think this needs to go up all the way up the chain. And again, it's not isolated to Oregon. Right now, if you follow the federal stuff, there is a new bill on the horizon coming down. So we have the Mission Act, which was the bill that was federal law that allowed these vets to choose their care. Well, we're so dumb that we need a bill called the Complete the Mission Act in order to remind the VA that the Mission Act is law. This is how inefficient we are, or how diabolical the VA is. So, again, I'm going to put a letter together demanding some responses, demanding some answers. I don't know where that's going to get me. But if other members of this council would like to sign on to that letter, then I will graciously send that to Scott to have you guys look at it. But this is causing a lot of problems within the veteran community. It's hurting our veterans, and it's hurting, and I'm sure Councilor Massey knows this. This is something that's been going on for years. This is nothing new. And I think it's time, it's our obligation, and I think it's our responsibility, because we do still serve veterans here in this city, considering the high number of vets, that we say something about this and that we demand something be done. If not, that's fine. I'm still going to send it out, but it would be great if I can get additional signatures on there. And House Bill 2537, this is how bad it is. House Bill 2537 is basically saying that if the VA won't care for our vets, then Oregon will. So House Bill 2537 basically establishes a veteran waiver program for OHP. So now veterans if you're a veteran and you're at 400% or below the poverty line, you can get a veteran waiver and you can get OHP. Because if you have VA, you don't really, anyways, it's very complicated dealing with the VA. If you have any other insurance, the VA becomes your secondary, and that other insurance becomes primary. So the VA tries to get out of any way they can to take care of you. So anyways, this bill is extremely important because it's going to open up, it could potentially eliminate a lot of these issues. So yeah, that's why I want to keep an eye on that. And if anybody would like to join that letter, just let me know and I'll be glad to send it to Scott.
I'd be happy to look at it. Okay. Other items? Not seeing any. Okay. Well, if that's, we do not have an executive session. We already did council report, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. None heard. We are adjourned.
Congratulations, El Presidente.
El Presidente.